All right, welcome back, folks. Joining us now is the former three-term governor of the state of New York and founder and chairman of the Pataki Cahill Group, Governor George Pataki. Good to see you again, sir.
Nice being with you again,
Always
Steve.
good to see you. All right, you and I have talked over the months, many months, about your possible interest in a presidential run. And so I want to get an update on that right now. Of course, Mitt Romney dropped out. Does that affect you at all? And what is the latest with you?
You know, who else is running really doesn't affect what I do, but we have taken a major step, which is to create a super PAC. We call it We the People, Not Washington. For obvious reasons, I don't think Washington reflects the views of the people, and it is the critical step towards mounting a campaign. I am as close as I've ever been. I can't say that I will be a candidate, but I'm headed up to New Hampshire again, and I intend to be making the rounds constantly over the next few weeks.
And what makes you decide, yes, I'm getting in, no, I'm not getting in, and what's the time
Well,
frame?
I'll tell you, I'm very strongly looking to run because I honestly think that the condition of the world, the condition of our government are the worst they have been in certainly over a decade, and we need to change things. And I know that I have the background, the experience, and I believe I have the vision to be able to fundamentally change the way Washington functions.
When Romney left, some feel he took a shot at Jeb Bush by saying that he feels a young, up-and-coming, new blood, unknown will arise to the top.
Well, that would be me, Steve.
Okay.
I'm ready. I'm relatively unknown, new. I haven't run in a while. And I don't know if he was shooting at Jeb, but I think it's more about ideas and background and vision than it is about other possible
Well,
steps.
what about the fact that you've been removed from the scene outside of New York? I mean, you've been around the country, but you know what I mean. I mean, at one point you had great name recognition.
Right.
That's probably waned a little bit.
Sure.
How much of a challenge is that?
You know, it's both a challenge and I think it's also an asset. I don't think people want someone whose whole life has been obsessed with holding political office, and mine hasn't been. I've had a great time in the private sector over the last 8 years, and yet I've been very involved in listening and engaged with public policy. And now, if, as I expect, I do choose to run, I think the fact that I have had this time away from government, away from politics, is a positive. It does make it harder because people don't remember who I am, but we can remind them of that.
All right, well, that's an interesting, of course, they remembered you at the time if they think back to 9/11. And I want to get to that in a second. But there's a story in the New York Times today about the what they call the surprising power of blue state Republicans, and how most of Romney's votes came from more people in California voted for him than did in parts of Texas, and then more in Chicago than in parts. That's a surprising revelation to a lot of people, that there are blue state Republicans, and that, they say, is an explanation why conservative candidates don't get the nomination, and you wind up with moderate Republicans like McCain, like Romney, like Bob Dole. Is that accurate?
Well, I think it's the Times, and I don't accept everything they write. I think we need a conservative candidate, and I like to think of myself as one of the conservative candidates. When I ran for governor here in New York, a deep blue state, I ran not just on the Republican line, but on the Conservative Party line. We have multi-parties here. So I ran as a conservative. I wish there were a lot more blue state conservatives and Republicans, and that's part of what I have always tried to do, is broaden the appeal of our philosophy to non-traditional Republican voters.
All right, let me just ask you, and I know it doesn't matter what other candidates do, but just let me give the people a gauge and give myself a gauge. To the right or to the left of Chris Christie?
You know, I'm not going to, Steve,
No?
forgive me, but you know, there are a
okay.
million political experts who will tell you that. I'm proud of my record. I don't think anybody has as conservative a record in cutting taxes, over $143 billion in tax cuts. Changing entitlements, I reduced the welfare rolls by over 1 million people. And in Washington, we have to dramatically reduce the size of the federal government and the federal workforce. When I left, the state workforce was 15% smaller than when I took office. So I'm proud to put those achievements, as opposed to talk, out there with anyone at all.
Let's talk about foreign policy and, of course, terrorism. We've seen what terrorism has done here and abroad in the past several months. Yet Barack Obama gave an interview to Fareed Zakaria, and here's some of what he had to say in downplaying the threat of terror. Let's watch.
What I do insist on is that we maintain a proper perspective, and that we do not provide a victory to these terrorist networks by overinflating their importance and suggesting in some fashion that they are an existential threat to the United States or the world order.
But aren't they?
They're a tremendous threat to the world order. You have ISIS that is looking to establish the caliphate again across national lines, and sadly, they are growing in power and attracting Westerners and planning to attack us.
So what world is he living in?
I have no idea what this president has dreamed of in foreign policy for the last 6 years. It seems as though denial or the absence of a plan, as he said about ISIS, is his policy. It is far more important to be realistic and, well, very simply, Steve, the most important thing government does is to provide for the security and the safety of its people. I fear we are not remotely doing enough. We have got to attack these terrorist groups overseas before they have the chance to attack us again here.
Yeah, I'll give one more from Barack Obama, and then we'll wrap it up.
It is absolutely true that I reject a notion that somehow that creates a religious war, because the overwhelming majority of Muslims reject that interpretation of Islam. They don't even recognize it as being Islam. And I think that for us to be successful in fighting this scourge, it's very important for us to align ourselves with the 99.9% of Muslims who are looking for the same thing we're looking for: order, peace,
and prosperity is what he says. Naive?
I think certainly naive, but really denial. This president has refused to acknowledge that we are in a war with Islamic terror. The jihadists don't want to just sit down there. They want to spread radical Islam across the country, across the world, and it is just awful that our president doesn't acknowledge this. I mean, they still call Fort Hood workplace violence, and for whatever reason, they don't acknowledge the war that we're in. And you know, just one sad commentary. One of his top generals said Al-Qaeda is 4 times as strong today as it was 5 years ago. You don't hear that from this president. You should.
Thank you, sir. Good luck. I'm sure we'll be speaking to Governor Pataki in the near future and find out more about his possible presidential run. All right, folks, when we come back, we'll be joined by Ruben Navarrete Jr., syndicated columnist and CNN contributor. We always have good conversations. Don't miss that one on Newsmax Television.